Welcome in, Spoonin family. It has been a long week without you guys. We do not, unfortunately, have a guest this week or a theme song, but I'll tell you what we do have. We have an episode packed full of our Week 15 review. So we're going to go over what happened in the playoffs and the consolation bracket from last week. And we are also going to do a crunchy review of the matchups for this week. So we had a couple teams this past week who had a very coveted bye week. The Mossad was on bye, as well as Handcuff Hater. They have some much needed rest. Their players, they moved, at least Jake moved them all to their bench spots. Don't think I didn't see that. Acting like they're really all on his team, and he's really resting them, even though they actually played this week. So we are going to go over Week 15 first. I want to thank everybody for making it this far in the season. Your support is to the millions watching today. I couldn't have done it without you. But let's get moving into what happened this week. So we'll go over the big game here to start with. Usually we save the best for last, but we're going to go first this week. So we had a close matchup between the Jokers and Mechie's Mulligans. This was a game in which I picked Adam to win last week. He had a Jonathan Taylor and a Jamar Chase on his team, and Garrett just had his roster of trusty steeds that he has put together throughout the season. And spoiler alert, Garrett's team prevailed. So let's kind of break this down, and this really came down to a game of Adam having to trust Chris Boswell to win this for him. And typically, you don't want to have to rely on your kicker to win your performances. But that's what it came down to this week, and that's where we are. Once we make it this far in the playoffs, it doesn't matter. The median doesn't matter anymore. All that matters is beating your opponent, and that's exactly what Garrett did. So really, the MVP. Let's go over. Throughout the season, I've had fire and ice picks, right? But we're going to go over MVPs and not so MVPs. So first, the MVP of this matchup is Travis Etienne. Travis Etienne, he was first drafted by myself in like the 9th round. Probably a great draft pick that I just traded away to Jake. Jake then traded him to Randy's team for Derrick Henry, along with, I believe, so it was Travis Etienne and Travis Hunter for Derrick Henry. And then Garrett somehow acquired him, I believe, from Jake. So it was a great performance, 31 fantasy points against the New York Jets' hapless defense, in which they traded away any valuable piece of their defense. So they're really a team to target for the rest of the fantasy playoffs. If you have a running back, receiver, or anyone who just plays football, I would play them against the New York Jets. And it was a great play with Jackson Dart. He had 20 points. Really, we're going to go through. So on Garrett's team, he had solid performances by pretty much everyone. I'm pretty sure, other than George Pickens, he had double digits from every single player except for his defense, obviously. Now, moving to the Adams side of the equation. So Jalen Hurts put up a solid game. Kyren Williams had a 2-touchdown performance against Detroit, which you weren't probably expecting. Jamar Chase had a big outing in a very bad game. So if you were to tell me before the week that Jamar Chase had 26 fantasy points and the Bengals lost 24-0, I would probably bet my house that didn't happen. But that's exactly what happened. So Joe Burrow had a bad game, but Jamar Chase did feast, which is encouraging. But it doesn't matter anymore because Adam is out of it. Zay Flowers showed up a little bit. Jacoby Myers had a decent performance. Really, the not-so MVP here, you can't really look at anyone from Adam's team and say they really just dropped the ball, because you're not really expecting, outside of Jonathan Taylor and Jamar Chase, I mean, you're not really expecting much out of anyone here. I mean, Kyren Williams will probably be the only one, with how he's been splitting carries to Blake Corum, that you'd think, oh, well, I would just be happy with like 12 to 15 fantasy points there. Maybe 12 to 13 rushes, maybe a target or two. But Kyron Williams had 2 touchdowns, which is great. But really, the odd not so MVP here would have to be Jonathan Taylor. And it's not his fault. They have Phillip Rivers at quarterback. They're playing the tough Seattle defense. So it's not, these aren't things you didn't see coming, right? I mean, you could see Jonathan Taylor not having a great game, but that is our not so MVP. And Garrett pulled out the win. So here we are. Garrett is on this tear, this late season tear that is continuing, and it will lead him straight into his next matchup against the Mossad. So we'll see if the Jokers can keep that smile on their face and wreck somebody else's week this week. So our next game was really an upset for the ages. We have Frankie Squad and the Rollbacks, and coming into this game, you had the Rollbacks. The Rollbacks, I believe, they were heavily favored by Sleeper by like 61% to win this game, win this matchup. And Frankie Squad dropped a good 192 on Josh's squad, right? So it just makes you think, Frankie Squad also might be a team of destiny here. He squeaked in the playoffs over Jonah's team for that 6th spot at the end. I said it for weeks in a row. I said, you do not want to see Cole's team in the playoffs. That's the one team, if I were to have made the playoffs, that I would not want to face. And sure enough, Josh's team got the kiss of death. And so let's see what happened here. Let's break this down a little bit. So Josh Allen, to really what you're expecting from Josh Allen was a monster performance against New England. He did have 3 touchdowns, but it landed him with 24 fantasy points, which, I mean, honestly, if you're Josh, you're hoping for a 40 burger, maybe a 50 piece. Christian McCaffrey, a modest 15.7 fantasy points, especially against the Tennessee defense, you're expecting a good 30 burger there. So I would say so far from what I'm seeing, the not so MVP would have to be Christian McCaffrey, because you're expecting guys like Josh Allen and Christian McCaffrey this late in the season fighting for those top seeds in the real NFL and the NFC and the AFC respectively. You're expecting those guys to go absolutely nuclear, and that's not what you got. You did get a nuclear performance by Puka Nukem himself, Puka Nacua. He was projected to only score about 20 fantasy points, but he ended up with 30. Had a career best 181 receiving yards. That's exactly what you want if you're Josh. It sucks if you're Josh. Josh scored 172 points. He would have beat Garrett. He would have beat Adam. And I mean, if there were no bye weeks at all, he probably would have beat everyone else except for Frankie Squad. So it's just honest, and I hate to say it this way because I love Josh, I love his team, I love his story this year, but you have to think about it and say this is a tragedy of a season. You start 0-6, 0-7, you make this epic comeback, you make some moves to position yourself to not only make the playoffs and squeak in, but you position yourself to win the division of the Fun Belt, and just to score 172. And that's what Josh has been scoring week to week. Josh, you couldn't beat him towards the end there. And Frankie Squad just has this outlier performance, and his boys were heating up. James Cook, 34 fantasy points against New England, 2 touchdowns. I hit a receiving touchdown, so 3 altogether. Bucky Irving didn't do what you wanted him to, but Frankie Squad had Nico Collins show up, and the Texans are really heating up. Arizona's a good matchup for pretty much any position at this point. JMO does what you want him to do, does not drop a 0. There's only 2 things that Jameson Williams can do. He can give you 30 or 0, and he gave Cole 30 in this game. So, and you also had Colby Parkinson go absolutely berserk. That is the MVP here. That won Cole his matchup. And I'm actually playing Colby Parkinson tonight in my league, in which I had the bye week this week, over Aronde Gadsden. So we'll circle back and see how that played out for me. The Little Spoon does have other endeavors, but they're not as important as this league. This league is ultra competitive, and this is the hardest league by far to win it. I'm in the playoffs in every other league I'm in the second round, but that that doesn't even light a candle to how hard it is to win in this league. Um, so we have also CD Lamb doing what you want him to do, coming back from the concussion. No touchdowns, but 111 yards receiving. He's banged up this week. He is not banged up. He was sick this week, so we'll see if he plays this week when we do our matchup preview. Um, yeah, and also, man, I mean, there's several MVPs here you can talk about. This is a historic, I mean, really vintage Cole performance here. You have the Chicago defense totally lighting up the Cleveland Browns and Shedeur Sanders. 3 interceptions, 5 sacks, scoring 21 fantasy points. So really, the Chicago defense and Colby Parkinson are really the reason that Cole scored over 150 points this game. I mean, you wouldn't expect that player and that defense to do that this game, not to that magnitude. I mean, Cole really shouldn't have beaten Josh, but I mean, when it's crunch time, it's those MVP type performances in the playoffs that you're looking for, and it happens every single year. So, great season. Want to pay homage to the rollbacks. Had a super exhilarating run towards the end there, but I just want to say this. Maybe this will add to the fuel to keep Josh super hungry for next year, not deflated. But because I mean, I'm in no position to say this from my team standpoint, being a consolation team, but this season's a tragedy. And with the team that Josh drafted, Josh Allen, Nico Collins, Justin Jefferson, Trey McBride. Sure, he didn't draft a running back, but he made some moves to acquire decent running back options. This is a tragedy, and it should be seen as such. This isn't just, oh no, Josh isn't in the playoffs. This is a severe letdown. This is a failure. I know Josh will see it that way. And he has to be heartbroken. And I think that heartbrokenness will lead him to having an even greater draft this year because he had a good, Jake says it was a C-minus draft. I don't think the only reason I would say it's C-minus was because of the running backs that he drafted. But other than that, he had a superstar lineup, and also he made A-plus trade moves. And it just makes you think, if he were to have made a move earlier in the year, he wouldn't be in this position. But he held firm, which is valiant to start the year, and he held firm for weeks, and then he started making moves. But if he made a move sooner, he probably wouldn't have been in this position. He would have had a first-round bye by far. So you have to think maybe Josh gets a little more aggressive next year, earlier in the season with his moves. So keep an eye on that. Great win for Frankie's squad. Congratulations to moving on to the second round. All right, let's move on to the consolation bracket. We won't spend too much time here, but there's some noteworthy things that happened. Randy's nuts, man. Bravo for fighting and keeping your spirits high, making waiver acquisitions, making trades all through the year to try to do something. He ended up 3-25 in the regular season, and this was the week that Patrick took the family dog to the farm up north so it can have a better life. Randy is that dog, obviously, and he was put to rest, out of his misery, no more pain. Randy's nuts is done. He can look forward to being there in person at the draft next year. I really hope that he is, and I'd love to see Randy in person. I've only seen him on a live stream. So, Patrick, great performance. We're not going to go too far into the consolation wins. Patrick did lose Patrick Mahomes this game, so that's going to hurt him whenever he goes into round 2 of the consolation bracket. But great effort here, and I am having a little bit of Wi-Fi issues, so please. There's something going on with my El Computadora. Let's see here. Huh, interesting. My computer is anti-spooning tonight. So, all right, since my computer is not working, it's completely frozen. I'm going to go into a little song that I prepared for everybody. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not going to do that. Just hold tight for a second. Son of a biscuit, bro. And my computer's shutting down. That's beautiful. Just hang tight. Oh, time for an upgrade. This is a 2020 MacBook Air. It's about time for a new one. A lot of college material on here that I don't need anymore. Need to clear some space. All right, 1 second here, folks. All right, this week we have our sponsor, Fairlife Protein. They've been a trusted sponsor of ours since the season began, and I would love to have a new sponsor every week, but we need more sponsors to reach out. We haven't gotten any offers recently. It's probably because we haven't had consistent guests on the show. I'm sure our sponsors are starting to lose faith in us. So this is really putting the onus on the members here to start becoming guests of the show. You're really hurting our sponsor revenue. And I blame all the people who haven't been on the pod. So I call out Randy, I call out Adam, and I know these people have real life obligations, but I'm still going to call you out. Patrick, Zach, etc. Cole, man, that's too many people in our league that have not been on the podcast. That is it's sad. I'm just gonna be honest. This is week 16. I'm not even in the playoffs. I run this thing pretty much every week. I've had some fill-ins a couple weeks. Thank you, Josh and Jonah, or Jake and Jonah. But yeah, we need to do better, folks. We need to make this podcast great. And as this league evolves, the podcast is going to become even more so of an integral part of this league. So we're going to need some participation. It's hurting our ad revenue, but Fairlife has stuck with us throughout the beginning of this journey. So we do thank Fairlife for the high protein drinks, no added sugar, very little carbohydrates, only 4 grams of carbs. So you have to be thrilled with the quality of protein that Fairlife provides, and as well as being faithful in providing us their sponsorship revenue. So we thank you guys for that. All right, now back to the show. So, all right. So in the consolation bracket this week, I faced Zach's team. My team went nuts this week, at least for the Little Spoon standards, and what I've been getting every year. Bo Nix provided me, I believe, QB2 performance on the week. Really needed that. Almost dropped him for Trevor Lawrence. Should have done that. But that would have just given me a little bit more points and it wouldn't have mattered. Travion Henderson, man. I've been a believer all year. I've traded him like 3 times because Mike Vrabel was not a believer. But if Mike Vrabel is not a believer by this point, I think he should be fired. I don't care how good the Patriots record is. Travion Henderson is a dog. He's a Christian. He wore cleats the other week that said "Pray for persecuted Christians," alluding to the Nigerian Christian persecution crisis. So I always love a Christ-following guy who's outspoken about his faith in the league, and someone who's just not a thug. Someone who's not out there wearing the gold teeth and the necklaces. Someone who just works hard and is extremely talented. So I love having a guy like that on my roster. Also had Brian Thomas sighting. I mean, I think Bigfoot's been spotted more than Brian Thomas this season. Also, DK Metcalf gave me a touchdown. It's awesome to be able to talk about my team this week. I haven't really had much to talk about for a few weeks. And the Philly defense, I spent a bunch of fab on them to help me secure that consolation bracket, and it paid off. They had 16 points playing the hapless Las Vegas Raiders, and I hope they continue to help me out. Zach's team just kind of fell apart this week. I don't know what he's doing starting Christian Kirk and Jaden Higgins. That's on Zach. Honestly, I don't even deserve this win. Zach just made some crazy lineup decisions, to be quite honest with you. He was missing T. Higgins, but honestly, you could have closed your eyes and scrolled on the waiver wire and just picked a random name, and he would give you more production than Christian Kirk or Jaden Higgins. So I don't know what he's doing there. Maybe he just gave up. I don't know. Maybe he thought they were. I don't know what he's thinking. Maybe he's drinking spiked apple cider this time of year. Not sure. But it was great. Honestly, man, I will say, out of all the people we've talked smack about, I really enjoyed Zach at the draft during playing golf. He seemed like such an easy to get along with guy. I really like being around him for fantasy purposes. Wish he responded to me a little bit more, but great season, Zach. Hope to see you next year. So, all right, let's move in. So there's no other news to report. The other teams, like I said, had a bye. let's move into Week 16 preview. This is what will set up the game for all the marbles. All right, so we have our two matchups here to get us into the finals. We're down to 4 teams to make the finals. It's crazy how long of a season this has been, but also on the other end, it's gone by super quick. What matchup should we go over first? Maybe let's give Pastor Kyle his flowers here. He had a bye week, but now it's time to shut up or put up. All right, so he faces Frankie's squad, and that's probably not what he wanted, but also you probably don't want to face Josh either. I would rather face Cole's team than Josh's team. Josh still scored 172, and he scores that on an average. Frankie's squad, their performance last week, in my opinion, is an outlier. You're not going to see Frankie's squad put up 192 points this week. Not going to happen. So you have to be thrilled if you're Kyle. Sure, you don't want to go up against Zach, but there's really no team you do want to go up against at this point in the year. You do? Okay, so let's break down Kyle's side. So Kyle, his big hitters, let's go Gibbs and Jacobs, right? They're really out of his whole team, other than Kittle. Those are the players that are going to make it or break it for Kyle week to week, pending any sort of outlier performance from one of his wide receivers, maybe a big performance from Joe Burrow. Gibbs faces the Pittsburgh defense, which Pittsburgh defense is very bipolar. Some weeks, they're great at stopping the run, i.e., last week for the most part, except for garbage time with Devon Achane. But Gibbs is a pass-catching back. This game is in Detroit. I expect Gibbs to have a really big performance here. I think the Lions are going to pull out ahead of Pittsburgh pretty quickly. And you're going to have Gibbs going to be a key part of that. They're going to run the ball. Dan Campbell knows how to exploit bad defenses, and that's what the Pittsburgh Steelers have. We have Josh Jacobs facing the Chicago Bears. So Josh Jacobs hasn't practiced all week. However, Josh Jacobs says, I do this. This is me. I'm him. I play through injury. It's just part of what I do. So we expect him, the reports say that he's expected to show up. However, in handcuff hater fashion, he does not have Emmanuel Wilson. I believe Adam's team still has Emmanuel Wilson. If Jacobs misses, Emmanuel Wilson is a plug and start high-end RB2 in my opinion. But he doesn't have that option because he's the handcuff hater. So you better be squeezing your buns hoping this guy plays this week. Wide receiver wise, Rashee Rice should not play due to concussion. So you would hope Xavier Worthy gets a boost. Now you do have Gardner Minshew throwing the ball, but we know from Gardner Minshew's past experience with the Indianapolis Colts being his best and most recent example. You can't really count the Raiders because they were just a terrible team. But with the Colts, he peppered Josh Downs. He peppered Michael Pittman. You were hoping that AR-15 did not play. You wanted Minshew to play for your fantasy assets from the Colts. So I don't think it's really that bad. And if Rice doesn't play, I'm guessing Worthy and Travis Kelce are going to be the biggest beneficiaries of that. You do have George Kittle playing Indianapolis, and you do have the 49ers trying to get a top seed still, I believe, in the NFC. I think that's still up for grabs for the most part. So we'll see what Brock Purdy does with George Kittle this game. George Kittle had a good performance last game, about 20-something fantasy points. This is tight end premium, so you hope Kittle comes up. He's playing Hawkinson in the flex. It seems like J.J. McCarthy really likes Hawkinson. It hasn't turned into a monster week, but you've gotten some modest numbers from Hawkinson in the last couple of weeks. So maybe Hawkinson has a big week this week. And you really hope Aubrey gives you that 20 piece, man. He's playing the LA Chargers. I suspect, the Chargers have a good defense. If they can stop Dallas from getting to the goal line a lot, you could see Aubrey having a good performance. So I'm going to say his MVP is going to be Aubrey. I just don't want to pick the obvious of Gibbs or Jacobs. And I do think Joe Burrow playing the Miami Dolphins, we just saw a 42-year-old Aaron Rodgers kind of pick them apart. Joe Burrow, for lack of better words, a pissed off Joe Burrow coming off a 24-0 loss against the Baltimore Ravens. I think he's going to come out firing on all cylinders, especially if he has T. Higgins back this week. So expect Joe Burrow to have a good performance. Now, on the Frankie squad side of things, you have Dak Prescott, pretty much out of the playoffs. I think they have a 1% chance, or maybe they have been mathematically eliminated at this point. But you have Dak Prescott pretty much not really having anything to fight for. But, if Jake and I know anything from his days at Mississippi State when we filmed him that one day during their spring game is, hey, he cares about a spring game. He cares about a game like this. He's a football player, and he's a tough football player. So expect him to be slinging it. But against the Chargers, I think we should have tempered expectations. James Cook against the Cleveland Browns defense. Cleveland hasn't been the same Cleveland at the beginning of the year stopping the run. However, they are a formidable defense, and they really have nothing else to play for other than pride, just like they have all year. So I think maybe the defense might take a liking to stopping a guy like James Cook this game and getting after the quarterback and Josh Allen as well. But we'll see what happens there. I think James Cook will have a modest game, but nothing too crazy. Bucky Irving hasn't been the same Bucky that we liked last year. He's been recovering from that injury that he came back from earlier in the season against the Carolina Panthers. They've been a good team to run on, but yeah, we'll see if I really think Bucky Irving has a big performance here. The Bucks, their coach called them out, so they suck. Todd Bowles said this is a player thing. Why the Bucks have started to slide. I think they come out firing on all cylinders. I think Bucky has a big game. I think he is. I think you could bank him for 25 to 30 points this week. You have Nico Collins. Great matchup against the Las Vegas Raiders, against the Texans, who are still trying to win that AFC South. You have Jameson Williams. Big play Jameson Williams or bust Jameson Williams. Which one are we going to get this week? Against the Pittsburgh Steelers, let's say they get up big, right? Let's say that just in this scenario, let's say the Lions get up real big. They don't have to throw it a lot. You could see Jameson Williams having a down week. The Steelers are really, really good at letting receivers feast in the middle of the field, and that's where Amon-Ra operates. So I think you could see Jameson Williams maybe fading away in this matchup. He does have Colby Parkinson playing tonight. I think Colby Parkinson, and I hope for my sake in my other league, is a great play tonight. No Devontae Adams. The targets are going to have to go somewhere. You can't really bank on them going to Tutu Atwell or Kanata Mumpfield, the 7th-round rookie, or who else do they have? They have Jordan Whittington. It's going to be a Puka night. It's going to be a Kyron and or Corum night, and it's going to be a Colby Parkinson night. It seems like he's breaking out, not in hives or anything like that, but on the field. He's 26 years old. Sure, he's 5 years of experience, but we saw Travis Kelce kind of bloom later in his career as well. I'm not comparing him to Travis Kelce by any stretch, but we're starting to see a little bit of a breakout. And we've seen when one player misses on the Rams, man, those targets, that's a lot of vacated targets that were going to Devontae Adams that have to go somewhere. I expect a lot of them to go to Colby Parkinson. He's been a monster in the red zone, and we'll see. This is going to be a tough matchup. I think, in my prediction, I think Frankie's squad has the better all-around team from top to bottom, if I'm honest. Man, this is hard to say because I love Kyle. Man, unless Gibbs has a crazy game against Pittsburgh like he has in the past, which he could totally have. If he has like 40 fantasy points, which we've seen is more than doable for him, we've seen him put up 60. If Gibbs has – I'll make a prediction. If Gibbs has 30 or more fantasy points, I say Kyle has a good chance to win this matchup. However, if he doesn't have 30 or more, I say Cole wins this and wins it pretty convincingly. I don't think he has 192, but I'm going to go on the limb and say Cole wins this matchup because I'm going to bet against Gibbs having 30 or more points. I think Gibbs has a big game. I don't know if I think they might get up big and then they don't have to use Gibbs as much is the only thing. Because I know the Steelers have been turning it on, but when they play real teams like the Buffalo Bills a couple weeks ago, to start hearing Fire Tomlin chants. So I'm going to go Frankie's squad with the upset again. I think he beats. I think Kyle stumbles coming out of the bye week, and we get a Frankie squad win. I haven't been hitting my predictions recently. I missed on Adam's team last week. You can't say I didn't try to give Adam a win finally, but yeah, I'm gonna go Frankie squad here. All right, moving on to the big matchup. We have the Mossad and the Jokers. All right, so like I said, the Mossad rested their players, put them all on the bench like he's really in the NFL this week. But the Jokers, man, they had their lunch pail and their hard hat. They were putting in work this week. They took care of business. The Jokers had a great win this week, and now he's ready to take down the top dog, the Mossad. We have Heath Ledger going to Israel to take on the Mossad. So let's break down. All right. Oh, this is interesting. Garrett has Jacoby Brissett starting currently. All right. Let's break down Jake's team. All right. So he had the bye week. Currently, his starting lineup is Drake May, Quinshon Judkins, R.J. Harvey against Jacksonville, Cortland Sutton against Jacksonville, JSN tonight against the Rams. That'll be fun to watch tonight. Yeah, we have Drake London possibly coming back. However, Raheem Morris came out and said, we'll see what he's able to give us. That's not what you want to hear from your fantasy, from a fantasy perspective. You don't want to hear coach say, we'll see what he's able to give us. Maybe it's just coach speak, and he's trying not to give the opposing team too much to plan for. But yeah, we'll see how Drake London does coming back if he comes back. But you do have the two tight ends, Bowers and Warren. Warren has not been the same without a healthy Daniel Jones. And Brock Bowers does have Geno Sanders, but Brock Bowers is pretty QB proof. So we should see him have a pretty good game here. But he does face Houston. Houston's been tough on opposing defenses, and I can see Houston just crowding Brock Bowers and really getting after Geno. And if Geno's under pressure, his balls aren't accurate whenever he isn't under pressure. So playing the Houston defense, man, that's going to be rough. If Kenny Pickett plays, same exact thing, maybe even worse. Jake is rolling out Will Reichert as his kicker and Tampa Bay for his defense against Carolina. Maybe Jake should oh man, I was going to say Jake should pick up the Saints defense, but Garrett has already beat him to the punch. Garrett's side, he has Jacoby Brissett. He's starting him over Jackson Dart versus Minnesota, which I think is the right play. Atlanta has not been – they've been a pass funnel in recent weeks. So you're going to have Jacoby Brissett facing the Atlanta Falcons, Derrick Henry against New England. You're going to have Chase Brown against the not-so-good Miami defense. See if George Pickens can come back to his old self against the Chargers. We'll see if CD plays, but he should. Michael Wilson, who's been actually the wide receiver one in the last 5 weeks, which is like insane. So if Marvin Harrison Jr. comes back, maybe that takes away some of Michael Wilson's ability. But I think Michael Wilson is almost broken out to the point where you kind of trust him even with Marvin Harrison in the lineup. You have to think he's built some connection and rapport with Jacoby Brissett. So Garrett does have that Jacoby and Michael Wilson stack. I mean, that's a bold move to play those guys. I mean, if you were to tell me week one that Garrett was in the second round of the playoffs against Jake, and he was rolling out Jacoby Brissett and Michael Wilson as some of his top options, again, I would sell my house on that notion. I would bet against that 10 times out of 10. But here we are, week 16. He has Mike Evans as one of his other wide receivers that he picked up for absolutely nothing on the waiver wire. What a sneaky move. Man, Garrett's just like a garbage man. He's just picking people up, picking up lost treasure, man. Harold Fannin had like freaking 14 targets last game. That's insane. 14 targets, 11 targets the game before. Shadur obviously loves him. They're going to be playing from behind against Buffalo. I'm almost positive. So, man, you got to love Harold Fannin in this matchup, at least on a target-wise basis. Then you have Travis Etienne. Tough matchup against Denver, but it should be a close game with the way because the Jacksonville has had a really good defense as well as the Denver Broncos. So maybe this is a close game and they keep running the ball and Travis Etienne has maximal opportunities. And he, like I said before, he is rolling. And Cam Little, I think, is a great play this week as well at kicker. Um, you do have the New Orleans defense playing the New York Jets. The New York Jets are rolling out Brady Cook, rookie. I don't really know much about him, to be honest. I'm not going to pretend in front of our Spoonin listeners to know all things Brady Cook, but you have New Orleans facing the New York Jets, and the Jets have been hapless. Um, you should. I picked up New Orleans in my league as well, but then ended up deciding to go with the Buffalo Bills this week against Cleveland. But great pickup for Garrett for defense. Yeah, and then New Orleans also plays if Garrett can make it to the championship round. New Orleans plays the Tennessee Titans, and that has been a good matchup for your defense. So Jake has some decisions to make before this game rolls around. Does he start Audric Estime? Last year, I'm also in a big ESPN 14-team league, $1,000 payout. Last year, I was in the conference finals, semifinals, whatever, before the championship, and same exact thing for the Saints. Alvin Kamara went down. I had the chance to play Kendre Miller or Tyrone Tracy last year for the game before the championship. I rolled up Kendre Miller. If I were to have played Tyrone Tracy, I would have won and went to the championship. And then championship week, I blew out both of the championship teams and would have won $1,000. Would have won the championship. So I have a little trepidation just from a PTSD standpoint. Is it the same thing for Audric Estime? Jake knows the Saints better than anybody in this league. Um, Most people in general. He's a huge fan. So does he know something we don't? Do all the carries go to Audric? He only had 3 carries whenever good old Devin Neal went down last game. Man, the Saints are just ravaged at running back. However, maybe Jake has something up his sleeve here, or do they go to someone else on the team? Do they go with an Evan Hall as their main option? But Andre Estime is a big back. He's 5'11", 227. He should be your primary give the rock, pound the ball. Evan Hall, I think, profiles more as a pass catching back. He's 5'10", 209. So you could see him playing on third downs maybe and having a little less opportunities, but more targets in the PPR format. So we'll see what Jake decides to do. He has a lot of decisions to make. Does he? I mean, he's probably not going to start Kenneth Walker in a bad matchup against LA this week. He has a couple minutes to make that decision. Looks like he's benched Justin Jefferson for the moment for Cortland Sutton. I know he texted me asking me what I would do. Little Spoon doesn't have much advice because he's had terrible lineup decisions this year. But I do think Cortland Sutton is the play over Justin Jefferson. And to be honest, man, I don't want to have Justin Jefferson on my bench if he goes off. However, he hasn't given you anything. He's had no more than 8 targets in the last 4 or 5 weeks, 8 being the highest. He had 6, 6, 4, and 8 the last 4 weeks. And the most catches he had was 4, which was 4 weeks ago. He's had 3 straight weeks with only 2 catches, averaging 2 catches a game. His average yardage per game right now, over the last 4 games, not average, but he had 48 yards, 4 yards, 11 yards, and 22 yards. You can't put that in your starting lineup. It's just a terrible, terrible quarterback situation. You have to go with Bo Nix, maybe finding Cortland Sutton in the end zone. I would play Cortland Sutton. I would not mess around with Jefferson. I would make him show me something this week, and then if I make it to the championship, if I'm Jake, then maybe you can play Jefferson next week. But it sucks. He made that big trade to get Jefferson, traded Achane, which sucks. Now he has to rule out Judkins against Buffalo, and they're probably going to be playing from behind. So this isn't an easy matchup by any means for the Mossad. This is not the Mossad that we grew fond of earlier in the year that was just the powerhouse that they were. But you're hoping for a big performance from Drake May. Maybe they're reinvigorated after losing to Buffalo last week, and Drake May goes off. He does have that rushing upside, and you need JSN to have a big game this week. If JSN can start this Thursday night off with a good 30 burger, man, you got to be happy. You almost need it if you're Jake. You need one of your guys to go absolutely bananas. And really for Garrett, you just need your guys to keep doing what they've been doing. Everybody's been pretty steady for Garrett. So I think if you can get steady performances from Garrett's team, you're going to get a win. Now, Jake, I think if JSN goes off, maybe you get more work than you're expecting from RJ Harvey. You have a chance to win this game, but don't expect much from Drake London coming back from injury. You almost want to temper your expectations for Brock Bowers as well. Tight end position is hard in general to gauge. And hopefully, maybe there's an outlier here. Frankie's squad surprised us last game, right? You had unexpected heroes like Colby Parkinson and the Chicago defense. Maybe you get a good performance from Tampa Bay against Carolina. And maybe you have Tyler Warren surprising us on Monday Night Football against San Fran. But I'm gonna give the win, the upset to the Jokers. That's gonna be my guess. So just to wrap things up, we previewed last week. Great matchup. We had the Jokers winning last week, securing their spot in the second round, upsetting Mechie's Mulligans, who had a great year. Let's give Adams his flowers for almost a one seed clinched year. He almost had the bye week, and he needed that bye week last week. And you also had a sad day with the rollbacks losing last week. And this week, our predicted winners are going to be the Jokers and Frankie squad, both with the upsets. I think this is an upset type week because the teams look so much different. Now, just to go into the consolation bracket just a little bit, we don't want to harp on this. I do play Jonah's team. Jonah talked a lot of smack. I thought it was a little distasteful. Jonah coming into this year, said he knows what it takes to win a championship. He won that championship, that baseball state championship, and he's talking a lot of smack. And I don't know what it's like to be a state champion. I don't know what it's like to win a championship. I bet that's a great feeling. But this is fantasy football. This is and not only is it fantasy football, it's fantasy football in this league. It's completely different. You make one wrong move, you find yourself out of the playoffs and maybe way out of the playoffs like myself. But you have him starting Phillip Rivers. You got to think if he keeps that, if he starts Phillip Rivers, you gotta take that as Jonah saying I could give a crap about the consolation prize. Screw it. I don't care if I win. So you do have Achan and Hampton, which I am worried about. Both have plus matchups. I'm worried about those guys, but his wide receivers, Rashee Rice, should be out. You don't really expect much from Trey Tucker. DJ Moore has kind of caught flame, I believe, a little bit, just a tad. He had 22 points last week, but he could also give you 0. So I'm going to give myself the win this week, man. I think I've been grinding too hard this year to not win something. I got to win. You know what? I'm just going to say I'm going to take this one from Jonah real quick. I'm just going to take it from him like a little ice cream cone from a child from behind. Just going to slip it right from him. He's going to cry. He's going to tell his parents that I took it. And then I'm going to say I didn't do it, but I'm going to have ice cream all over my mouth. So I'm going to take this game. I'm not going to break down the matchups because it's a consolation bracket. No one cares. But I'm just hoping Travion Henderson keeps rolling, hoping Bo Nix has a solid performance, and maybe DK Metcalf has a big game. And I need Philly defense to keep doing what they're doing. And then you have Patrick's team. Patrick's team has been decently solid all year, but he faces the real Slim Chaney. Chaney has Bijan, a disappointing Ashton Genty, but he did have Amon-Ra put up 41 while he was on his consolation bye week. You have A.J. Brown playing the Washington Commanders, should eat. Michael Pittman, temper your expectations with Phillip Rivers. I'm going to give this one. And then on Patrick's side, it's really your backs. It's Javonte Williams, Breece Hall. Those guys have to show out if you want to win. Maybe Lad McConkey having a good game against Dallas. But I'm going to give this one just because of the surefire power. I'm going to give it to Chaney. I'm going to have him knocking out Patrick, and it's going to be Chaney and I facing off. I mean, that's the matchup the people want. The people want the little spoon and the real Slim Chaney fighting for that draft pick for next year. I mean, both of us are going to be back next year, God willing, if we're still alive. But I think it's a no-brainer. It's going to be me and the real Slim Chaney facing off. Mark it, book it, get your flights booked to this matchup because that's what's going to happen next week. So thank you all for watching. I know this was a solo episode. However, we really appreciate the millions that tune in every week. And thank you for our sponsor, Fairlife. I didn't have a sip. I got too busy talking junk on the pod. So thank you guys. We have one more week left. Next week we'll do a championship preview of both the regular bracket and the lower bracket, and we'll see who wins it all. We'll see who takes it home. We'll see out of these 4 teams that we mentioned. So stay tuned, and hopefully we have a good guest next week. We should be able to find a good guest for championship week. That's what the people want. So thanks for spooning with us. See you later.